What's up, guys? EJ Stewart here, joined by Kendall Stewart. We'll give you guys our episode recap and review of Young Justice Phantoms. We're talking about episode 17, Leviathan Wakes. Kendall, this was the final arc in the Atlantis Aquaman journey with Calderon, and of course, learning more about some stuff we've seen that Orion's been doing for a long time, relinquishing the Aquaman duties. This new arrival of this Arion figure, we learn a lot about him in this episode. I told you after I watched it, I felt like this was a extremely fascinating arc that, similar to the Gotham stuff we've seen from Young Justice, I kind of wish we could have gotten a Greg Weisman, Brandon Vietti show on just what happens in Atlantis. And I ended up kind of wanting more after seeing this arc and this episode. I think this episode, this arc could have actually used maybe another episode to kind of continue the story. What were your thoughts on this finale of this Aquaman arc that we've been waiting for so long?
Yeah. First off, you're actually real. Yeah, you're in person.
I know, right?
So used to looking at you over a screen. Wasn't sure if you were virtual or not. But yeah. I mean, I thought that this arc was very interesting. I thought that we talked about it last episode or last review that we did over the 3 episodes that they released last week. That clearly this was setting up to be a very interesting end to the arc, and I thought they tied it up interestingly. I thought, when you have, they had a pretty good deal to accomplish, and it was so much that we weren't sure if they were going to fit it into one episode or if they were going to do 2 more, but they were able to tie everything up into one full episode, and I mean, I was intrigued by everything, and like you mentioned, the way that they do this show, like they easily could do either limited series on some of these other characters, or like you said, just more expanded full series on Aquaman and on some of these characters in the DC universe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as we kind of close this chapter, I think it opens up a lot of more questions for the future of this season with number 1, Superboy, what's going on with him. And we see even at the end of this arc, Aquaman, going on a leave of absence. He has this very difficult conversation with Dinah, and what is his future like in this Justice League? What's his future like in terms of being Aquaman moving forward, and him having to come to grips with this grief that he has because he's seen a lot of friends die, as we see as he talks about towards the end. So a lot of stuff to get to with this episode. I think the first thing I want to start with is the Orm portion of it, because Orm, we saw, was captured last week. We're still trying to figure out what his deal is, how he is alive, and
they hint that he was a clone, or we think that he may have been a clone because they were making up. We knew he already died.
We knew something was odd because he was talking about getting visits from Orin, his brother, and Orin's like, I never saw you. I did go to the actual facility. I was so angry and so upset about what happened. I didn't actually visit you. So he was saying things that were inaccurate in regards to what had happened over the course of time. So it made people wonder, and I think us wonder, is he potentially a clone? We got that answer. But that answer ended up being very crazy.
A lot more complex.
Yeah, a lot more complex. So he is a clone, but and he's a clone courtesy of the light, courtesy of Vandal Savage.
Expect, yeah.
But it is a much more elaborate scheme than we originally had projected, because 1, he is revealed to be a clone. They get McGann, who I think does a great job of helping out in the situation to figure out what exactly is going on.
And I think the rest of our theory would have went that, well, Ocean Master is probably a clone, and that means that Arion is probably a clone as well.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. Ocean Master's a clone, Arion's a clone, and it went in that direction. But the twist being that Orn is a clone designed to lose to Arion, and that Arion is actually Ocean Master. Arion, they were able to take the thoughts and the DNA from the original Ocean Master that was killed by Lady Shiva and put that into Orn's body by cloning Arion using the flute that Arion used way back in the BC era before Atlantis had fallen. So a crazy scheme. Not something that any of us had anticipated at all. Kendall, what was your thoughts on how they executed this portion of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was like you said, very, very bizarre, very cockamamie, um, but it seems like something the light would certainly go with. Um, I felt like it was it reminds you, and I think a lot of people understand that the Orm character is sort of like DC's version of Loki,
Mm-hmm.
and this felt very Loki esque
Yeah.
in the idea that you have something him being undercover trying to become king, and but undercover in a way that seems so like ridiculous that you're like not even Ocean Master could do that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I thought it was incredibly. I mean, we predict a lot of stuff on this review show. I mean, you're ahead of the curve 9 times out of 10,
Yeah.
and this was one that I didn't see coming. We never really mentioned it on this show, and so that is a job well done by Greg Weisman. Did not. There was some foreshadowing that clearly something was up with Arion, but I never jumped to the conclusion. Well, maybe Ocean Master is Arion, which
Now,
is a hell of a guess. It was a hell of a right. It makes total
it
sense.
made it all came together so well because when you see these, Arian come into the fray, the people loving him,
They know the
is
psychology of
of
the Atlanteans
right,
and all the
and
history,
quite frankly, how much Orin had kind of lost a lot
equity.
of favor, lost
Yeah,
a lot of equity, left definitely a lot of political equity. I mean, the other kings and royals of the kingdom were very quick to just give it up to Aaron. They're like, "Yo, man, you ain't getting the job done." Like,
yeah.
like this guy has the people. They're about to be in a complete rebellion. I mean, most of this episode from the Orin Mara side takes place in Zebel, and Zebel is already the most kind of like off the beaten path place because they don't really respect what's happening in Poseidonus, and their king, who's Mara's father, got no respect, no love for Orin, no love for Mara because he feels like he left her dry high, he left him high and dry, and they're ready to revolt completely. So the light definitely a smart play by Vandal Savage to try to go with what's name. It goes very wrong at the very end of their plan. It looked like everything went together pretty smoothly. But before we get to that, there was a pretty exciting journey by Calder and his team. We learned that this journey they were a month out in the deep waters looking for Arion's crown because they thought Orin's Golden was look, if this guy really is Arion, then the only way to fulfill this prophecy is you guys get his crown, and we'll know by then if this is who he says he is. So Aquaman goes with Calder. Excuse me, Calder. Calder, who's Aquaman, goes with Wind, his boyfriend. He goes with Delphus, and he goes with Lagoon Boy or Lagan, and they go into the deep sea. And they this to me, Kendall, almost to me felt like when we heard that show, the movie The Trench that was supposed to come out from DC. Like this to me was like that would be this movie. Like, cause you see the monsters under sea, you see the kind of little spooky little horror element to this quest to find this crown, and I thought it executed pretty well. I like again in some ways I feel like again we get to critiques of this episode. I wonder if this could have again used maybe another episode to kind of lean into just how treacherous this trek was. You see Calder has a beard and Wind's growing facial hair, and
I was a little confused.
yeah. I was confused too. So I was like, did he have a beard the last episode? Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all. And then I'm like, oh, this is because it's been a long time. What did you make of how they showed that quest for the crown?
Um. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting. I think it wasn't nearly as interesting, maybe, as the Aryan part and the whole political discourse. But um, I sort of felt like this arc in this episode almost kind of reminded me of like a Star Wars, something from the prequels, the Star Wars prequel movies, where
Yeah,
there's a lot of politics and then there's a lot of off world like adventure,
yeah,
and it's like a mix between both. And so I think if you like the off world adventure part of it, um, then yeah, you would have liked that arc or that part of that arc and that part of this episode because there was action, um, because it sort of felt like this would be the last one as you're watching it. It seemed like it was sort of just a means to an end. As we get to the the climax of the episode and the third act of the episode, but um, but yeah, we saw character development. I think especially from a character like Lagoon Boy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a means to an end. I think that is a kind of a fair way to kind of look at it because to me, I felt like this was really cool and this felt very important and they treated it as very important. But I almost feel like of all the arcs, like this may be the one part of an arc that was kind of hurt by the fact that they were tied to only doing 4 episodes. Because this was a very important thing, but unfortunately, because of the conspiracy that was unfolding Zebel and unfolding with McGann and with the clone Orm, it almost felt like all right, they're gonna get this crown. I don't think anybody's gonna die. I don't know how much this is gonna really matter. It was a cool scene. The scenes were all great, and they were the dialogue in it was really good. I really liked, you know, Lagan being like, "Look, man, like my wife's going in labor. Like, what the hell?" And you see kind of Aquaman and his stoic nature being like, "Yo, man, you wanna bounce? You could bounce. Like, we here to do this mission because that's what the king wanted, and you not ready for prime time, then you can leave."
Yeah.
And you see Win, being kind of like, you see kind of like the significant other of the person kind of maybe had to go back to, hey, I know he could be a little rough, like it's okay. And I say, look, he's been through a lot, man. He's a lot of stuff happening. You see, I thought you mentioned the Lagoon Boy aspect. I think one of my favorite parts of this episode was seeing him talk about, like, yeah, like, man, I know what happened with Connor, and I can't imagine how that's going with McGann. I regret the beef I had with Connor. Like, I really love seeing that because that just goes back to and shows like how people mature and people evolve. Like, you kind of forget that, like, yeah, he was McGann's boyfriend at one point in time, and Connor was like the third man who felt like he was on the outside looking in, and they had this little beef. But like at the end of the day, these were kids at the time. They were young people, and life moves on. And to see Lagan, I thought Lagan, I mean, he came across, I think, maybe the best in this whole arc. Like, he was a very annoying character in season 2 of Young Justice. Like, he was very unlikable, but he comes across very likable in this episode. He comes up very likable in those scenes, kind of extended his condolences to McGann and his sadness of Connor's death. I agreed. I thought that was one of the bigger points of that arc, of that part of the story that I did like. But
yeah,
I just wish that they could have gotten more from that.
And the show continues. It continues to be a problem for me how the show goes back and dives into those things from a season or 2 seasons ago.
Yeah,
and it's not a bad thing in terms of writing and in terms of the show. It's just those seasons have been so long, ago,
right.
that unless you've rewatched it, which I haven't, I've rewatched a little bit of season 3, but I haven't rewatched any of season 2 since it came out.
Yeah,
and so a lot of those details just go right over my head.
Oh yeah,
or I'm watching it and I'm like, I don't even remember that.
You know what I was a little upset about? I don't know, and forgive me if I'm wrong on this because that happens sometimes. I'm not gonna be perfect on this show. I feel like the first 3 arcs, they put out a watch list. HBO Max put out a watch list saying, hey,
essential episodes.
These are episodes that you should watch if you want to get to it. And I tried to watch them. I think the first 2 arcs I watched them. The 3rd arc I think I watched some but couldn't get to all of it by the time they got to the stuff with Zatanna. But this arc, they didn't put one out, which one scared me. I'm like, oh my god, are we not gonna have next season? So they don't care. But credit to HBO and DC, they've really promoted this show much better. I think coming up into this next season, new comic book coming out, Young Justice Targets, that's going to continue beyond this season. Comes out in the summer, so make sure you guys check that out if you enjoy this this show. But like, not having that, I think was a little tough because I mentioned in the last review we did, like a lot of these threads that they were talking about a lot of it was coming from the comics. Like I didn't get in comics I didn't read. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe they felt like, look, a lot of the context you're going to need, you're actually not going to get from watching the show. But there were some things like the beef between Lagan and Superboy that you would have had to have watched those episodes to kind of get that and feel Lagan's overall maturity and his overall growth as a person. Even forget about this his relationship with this woman that he was in love with or this young woman that he was in love with. It's like he like just as a person, he was a very immature person at that point in time. He was very impulsive. It was actually funny to see him use Neptune's beard in a good way in this episode. I mean, he's always him being like Neptune's beard that damn Connor is in my way. But here he's like, he helped save them and stop the monster from eating them, and he was like Neptune's beard, and I was like, hey, that's a. And now I'm curious what that word is and like, or what that euphemism would be for English. But that's I won't say it's like hell yeah. I don't know what it is, but nonetheless, I did enjoy that part of it. But the climax of this episode comes at the part where it was very weird. And again, this is why I felt like this episode kind of came around. In some ways, I wish there was more time because, they find the crown, they come into Orm, and or rather, they're coming to Arion, who we learn is Orm.
Yes.
And McGann is telling Orin, "Yo, fam, this dude is not Arion, and in fact, he's actually Orm. So you gotta do something about this." But Orin's like, "I can't. Like, if I do something now, I'm gonna look crazy, basically."
Yeah.
So it's this very weird moment where Arion, he acts like he's like, "Oh yes, this is my time now," and he's going to get this crown, and Orin's trying to tell him like, "Yo, man, like,
don't put that
on, man. Like, yo, this ain't the way." He's like, "Shut up, I don't know what you're talking about, whatever." But like then we realize, oh yeah, this really is Orm. Like he's talking to him like he's his brother. So that it's him, and it looks like the master plan may come to fruition. I thought that the light got a major W here, but sure enough, things go horribly wrong. He puts that crown on, his body starts to disintegrate, and he basically almost explodes as a person. Like his skeleton is the only thing that's left. All of his matter is gone. And we learn that we see the crown start to kind of change color and mess up, and we see the lords of order, that little like that balance symbol that shows up. It's lighting up. They're clearly at work here, and you realize something major is afoot.
Yeah.
And Orm/Arion is now killed, and that is the last we see of him. And it leads them to see, all right, well, what's next? And the people were kind of confused, and Mirror wants to give the crown back to Orin as the High King, and Orin's like, look, if you think about the prophecy, I mean, it wasn't just Arion who stopped the red wave. It was Mirror as well. She was there with the clone Orin, who we know we can't give him nothing, and she's been here the whole time. And if you think about it, she's the one that deserves to be the High King. So pretty progressive move there, but everybody seems to be in agreement to make Mirror, who's been the queen, the High King of Atlantis. Thoughts on how that whole thing played out?
Yeah. I mean, that was, like, a very chaotic sequence. A lot happened. I do wonder, obviously you look back at it in hindsight, all the stuff with McGann and the Orm clone really was only for the audience. It really wasn't that functional in terms of the actual story.
Yeah.
Because if Orm puts it on anyway, if Arion puts on the crown, would the same thing have happened? The only thing we lose is, that interaction before he puts it on.
Right.
And Aquaman knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
do you think it would have been stronger if he didn't know? Like if somehow they found out after? Like, do you think it was strong to have him know but not do anything? I think in some ways it speaks to his character. Like it's kind of I kind of go back and forth. Like, I'll let you answer the question, but I kind of go back and forth because in some ways it spoke to his character. Because you would think someone who's been king, who's given up power, now he has every reason to stop him.
Yeah.
But also you think maybe there's some ego that says, oh wait, I'm not gonna just give up this power to someone who's now definitely evil and not wrong. But like him to be like, it's best for my world, Atlantis, for me to not do anything right now because otherwise I'm gonna look crazy and it's gonna be chaos. Like I think it spoke a little bit to his character, but at the same time, because he didn't do anything, I wonder do you feel like it did enough?
Again, it was interesting. I think it made sense. Like you said, you laid it out very well why he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that was a chaotic, it was frenetic pace that they ended that show on, or they ended that episode on. But I think the decision to place Mira in at the top makes sense. I think they sort of foreshadow it with the way that they were sort of positioning her throughout the arc and throughout the episode.
Yeah, she definitely comes across as like very level-headed.
Yes, very collaborative.
Yeah.
So I think it made sense in the end. Though her dad, he wasn't even cool with
man.
Arion becoming king. He was like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm voting for
Yeah,
myself.
when they did the vote, he was the only vote that voted against Arion being king, and a big portion of it was I'm voting for myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So even he was on board with that. So
yeah, not necessarily the biggest fan of the Orange Mira tandem, and
no, yeah, we've seen that story before.
we definitely have. But I did enjoy his inclusion in this, and like I said, I kind of enjoyed the politics of Atlantis playing out. I thought that it was really neat. It's not something that I think a lot of these superhero shows have really explored in animation very much.
No.
And I think it was great and neat to kind of see Orin really be like really tested and tried as king. Like I think most of the time I feel like when I've either read Aquaman stuff or watched Aquaman content, like he's like maybe initially they treat him as like, oh, he's an outsider, but then they eventually, they welcome him in open arms because he saved Atlantis somehow. He saved the world like that. It's like, all right, well, damn, you gotta embrace him at that point. But actually see Orin at this point in his career and life, like he's been Aquaman, he saved the world hundreds of times, probably he saved Atlantis probably thousands of times at this point, and even him to be like people like, I'm not sold on this guy. I thought it was a great kind of remix to what we're used to seeing from Orin, and again to speak to his character, not deciding that, oh, okay, good, Arian / Orin is dead, now I get my crown back, for him to look and say, well, this is a time for reflection, let's think about what happened. It's not best for me to take this crown back, but clearly for Mira, it would be. Did you buy the Atlanteans getting behind Mira as quickly as they did at that point in time? I mean, it had to be a very confusing time for them.
I mean, if I didn't, it's just a nitpick. Nothing
Right.
that important. But, again, they have to write a certain story and it's got to come out a certain way. So I get why they had to do that. Was it a little bit like, I don't know if this will happen like this in real life? Probably not, but I don't know. It's Atlantis. You can write whatever you want.
We're in Atlantis. We were talking about superpowered beings.
It's a fictional world. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were pretty hot on Arion out of nowhere. So
yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's very true.
It's possible, but
yeah, I Kendall make the point that Atlantis is very fair weather at this point. They love you 1 minute, they drop you the next.
Yes,
and maybe, and to some degree, maybe it does make sense to me again because Orin is Aquaman. How he's their greatest champion, at least in their generation, and they're ready to throw him out of there. So maybe it does make sense. Maybe they are very easily swayed.
Right.
When it comes to leadership, we see how divided it is throughout this time. So speaking of how that whole failure happened for Vandal Savage, it's a bad L for him. It's a bad L for him. And coming to gloat is his son Nobu, Dr. Fate, to be like, you really thought we were gonna let you get away with that, fool? You really thought we were gonna let you clone a person that you killed and give them this crazy power of a Lord of Order, and we were just gonna let you do that? You really think we were gonna let you do that, fam? Nah, we're not gonna let you do that, fam. We're not gonna let you do that. I said father. I guess it is his father. I said grandfather earlier, but yeah, he's like we're not gonna let you do that. Like, what do you think this is? And he's upset. He's pissed. I think it's one of the few times I think I've seen Vandal really lose control a little bit in terms of his anger. Because again, I think it was a plan that looked foolproof by most accounts, but for Vandal Savage, what has to be very difficult for him is he's dealing with a higher power right now. He's dealing with someone that's above him. He's not dealing with the normal people who he deals with, who are either at his level or most of the time much more below him. So this was a tough beat for him for sure.
Yes, the light will be back. Like I said, it was a power play. I was interested by, because there wasn't a whole lot of B plots in this.
Yeah.
But they did have a little bit of time where we saw Superboy.
Yes.
In the Phantom Zone, what we perceive to be the Phantom Zone.
Is that what you're going with? By the way, you're pretty convinced that it's the Phantom Zone?
Yeah. I mean, what you call it, 308 Phantoms.
Phantom Girl is who he's with right now.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if it was anything else. That would be a red herring. If they went in any other direction.
And in that scene, of course, he sees the bus go by, and that bus, of course, is the bus we saw in the episodes with Zatanna, And eventually she kind of goes back and kind of tries to replay what happened, and she realizes she saw Superboy. And it's kind of funny to see like we've gotten so much from Superboy in this arc to know what he's dealing with, and then to go back to like where we were when we first started this arc. 'Cause that's where we were when we started this arc, when we saw him yelling help for help as the bus went by. Him we didn't know he saw the bus, but now we see that that's why he was able to connect with them, because he saw the bus go by. Of course, that was Clarion, taking them through hell essentially to try to find a point in time where he could get people to help him stop Child and get his that was his original anchor, but he was trying to get his own body back. This was interesting because of how it ended off. He sees the bus. He sees the bus go by, so he thinks that's his last chance. He's failed. He doesn't know what's going on. He also thinks maybe he's going crazy. He's like, why the hell did I just see a school bus? Like we all thought we were going crazy every time we saw the school bus in outer space and things like that. Yeah. But that's when a hand on his shoulder taps him, and it's none other than Lex Luthor, saying Red Sun. And it's a Lex Luthor who is in color, so he doesn't look like Wally. He doesn't look like another Phantom or a ghost or whatever the hell is going on. Is this just a continuation of the visions that he's been seeing, or is this actually potentially Lex Luthor talking to him? I don't know. I tend to think that it's probably just a continuation of the vision, but it is a very interesting way to end with something that we've kind of already seen. So is this potentially different than what we've seen?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's that's hard to say, but I think that I agree. My guess is that it's just them sort of showing that we're gonna end with Superboy sort of going in circles a little bit, kind of back to start. You think you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you find out you're right back where you started. So
that's a fair point.
I think that's sort of what they're trying to illustrate, but I don't know. I mean, it's so weird because I don't see how Lex Luthor would be communicating with him like that. But the Phantom Zone is obviously a very Superman centric location, so maybe he's got experience.
Yeah. So all in all, it was a sad day for Superboy, but a good day for Atlantis. Of course, Calder, puts in his leave of absence, so he's no longer Aquaman for this time being. He's gonna go and take some rest and get some help. We see, Lagan eventually does get introduced to his newborn child, which is very nice to see as well. And we do see, shots of Calder with Wind, with Delphus, and they're happy, and it seems like he's potentially moving in a better space. But I thought the end credits, as I mentioned at the top of this show, was difficult. Because Calder is such a stoic figure, and you see that he's really struggling because he's dealt with the losses of now Connor. He dealt with the loss of Wally. He dealt with the loss of Tula.
Yes.
And then they mentioned Jason Todd in there as well. So something that it was something he dealt with that was difficult. The Jason Todd part of that was interesting because it made me wonder, and I asked you off air when we watched it last night again, like, do we think that Jason Todd's death is connected to the normal story that we're accustomed to, being the death in the family, crowbar, Joker situation, or is it different? Because we saw with Barbara Gordon, her paralysis, it was very different than what we saw with the Killing Joke. And, not to say that Calder can't still be sad that, I'm sure Robin was a part of the team or was working with them at some point. It can't just be sad that maybe a friend died and they're honoring him. But I did kind of make note of, well, he taking it so hard, taking it so personally. Like, those other deaths were much more personal. Like, Tula was someone he was in love with. Connor and Connor was his teammate. Wally was his teammate. Wally was on a mission with them when he died. Like, so, Jason Todd being killed by the Joker randomly, not having nothing to do with the team. Not to say, again, he can't be grief-stricken, but him lumping them in with those other three made me wonder if there's something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're continuing to drop tea leaves and plant seeds when it comes to Jason Todd.
Yeah.
There's clearly a story there they want to tell. I cannot wait for them to tell it.
Oh, I know.
And I don't think we're that far away.
You don't think so?
With Damian Wayne, obviously,
is it possible?
He's much younger.
Is it possible it's the Nightwing arc? Is it possible the Nightwing arc gives us more about what's going on with the Jason Todd situation? Not like we haven't seen Jason Todd, we've seen him plenty now.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. Like, he's huge. Every time they show him, you're like, that guy. He doesn't need 5 years to get ready. Like, that guy could go out there tomorrow and probably knock some skulls.
Yeah.
So they very easily could operate, could sort of you know, put him in some sort of operation immediately. But I just, yeah, I mean, and will it be the Red Hood, or will he be someone else, or will he just be Jason Todd? All that are question marks. But there are a lot of stories where you say to ourselves, like, if you told me that we were getting a Red Hood movie or a Red Hood animated movie or something like that, I would say to myself, I'm all Red Hood out. We've seen the Red Hood and everything.
Interesting.
But with Young Justice, that's the one where I'm like, I kind of want to see Greg Weisman's version of Red Hood, because I feel like that may be better than every one that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that for sure. Yeah, and the Jason Todd thing is just fascinating, man. I mean, he's not someone they've shied away from really since season 2. I think season 2 was the first time we actually saw his memorial
legacy,
because that's when we saw Wally's, and we were like, oh snap, that's Jason Todd back there.
Yeah.
and they've not shied away from him. Again, he has showed up in season 3 and season 4, and the season included. Like, so we know he's alive, and he's not someone they're shying away from. So when do they actually pull the trigger on telling a story about him or with him? I don't know.
It's funny. The last theory I want to throw out there is that we talk about the Beast Boy spiraling arc, which they didn't touch in this episode. But I do wonder if that sort of ends with possibly Connor coming back. Sort of.
What do you mean it ends with Connor coming back?
Like, if and when Connor, because we think that Connor will eventually be back. I mean, it's not guaranteed, but that's the way. Once you keep a character alive, it makes no sense to not bring him back. Mm-hmm. Maybe that is what sort of gets Beast Boy on the right track again.
It could be. I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that for sure. Yeah, I could see that. You know, and it's interesting you mentioned that. I'm kind of hesitating because I'm remembering that the comic book, the Young Justice Targets, Beast Boy's on the cover.
Right.
You know, for apologies, I don't have the comic book picture to show you guys, but he's on
Connor's on the cover as well. Right?
Connor's on the cover as well. That's even maybe more important, honestly. Right. Connor is also on the cover. So now, of course, if you read comic books, you know things can be very misleading, and they could be doing that to pull your leg. But
it could be flashbacks.
Yeah, it could be flashbacks too. Like, you don't really know, but they are on the cover, and they're like them normal selves. Connor's not blue in Phantom Zone. Beast Boy's not, you know, long hair in the press. Like, he's got his fresh haircut. He's in his costume. He looks like he's running the outsides like he normally would. So yeah, maybe this ends with them, and then the next story kind of goes into like their kind of reintroduction into superhero world. You know, their superhero world, their superhero life. You know, it's something I could definitely see. Something that would be interesting. But I think we can get to final scores here. So I'll go to Kendall first. What are you going to give episode 17, Leviathan Awakes? Leviathan Wakes, rather.
I'll go 7.5. I thought it was a solid episode. Decent end to the arc. My favorite aspect of the episode was the twist. You know, it's hard to catch us completely slipping nowadays. But
and even to catch us slipping in a way in which we kind of anticipated part of it, but a large part of it we didn't. Could not have guessed.
And it's not like watching Batman Hush, and it's like, oh, Riddler is actually Hush. Spoiler alert. And you're like, oh, I didn't expect that, but that's stupid.
Very dumb.
Yeah, right, this is stupid. Yeah. Like, with this, it makes total sense. For whatever reason, we're not expecting it, and it ended up being great. So, so they deserve a boost to, I would say, a 7.5 for just that moment in general.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a 7, which I know is a little bit of a notch down. And the only reason I'm gonna go a 7 because I think, you know, it's the end of the arc, so I think their expectations are gonna be higher for me. So because of that, you know, the twist was a great twist. The execution of it felt a little abrupt. It just felt a little like, oh my God, this twist is crazy. What are going to be ramifications of this twist? We don't really see any because, you know, he dies very quickly. So now I almost wonder if there's a way in which we could have seen maybe or actually, again, that's why I keep saying they were missing an episode. Because I feel like maybe an episode of seeing maybe that month go by where Atlantis is seeing, you know, riots, and Atlantis is seeing strife, and Arion is still missing. They don't know where he is. And then you see again Aquaman and them on this crazy journey to find this crown. Like, seeing kind of the attrition that this whole process would have that it brought about may have made that abrupt ending not feel so abrupt. So that is a little bit of a knock for me. We didn't get anything with Superboy really, and anything from Beast Boy. I thought leaving the Beast Boy arc where they did was a little bit weird because McGann was such a big part of it, and then McGann's in this episode. Now of course people multitask. I'm not saying McGann can't do her job and then also be trying to help her brother, but it just is a little weird. Last time we saw her, she was begging him to
I guess
get out of
it's
his
hard,
funk.
what else was there to do? Like that was sort of that was a large play.
Yeah, I mean it was, but and in the end he did get an ultimatum. It was all right. You don't got to talk to us, but like you got to see a person or you're off the team, and you got to leave the house. And we don't know. We don't know what happened. I mean, this is a month later.
Yeah.
So we don't know if he did leave the house. Did he get help? Like we don't know anything. So I thought that was a little clumsy.
They'll go back to it.
They'll go back to it,
So
and
we'll see.
And the only way to get to like see all that Orm stuff was to get McGann involved, the psychic. So maybe some of that was like, look, this is the only way we can kind of tell the story. But I thought that maybe those things maybe knock it from getting the 8 that I think it maybe could have got. But it was still a very enjoyable arc. I did like this arc. It's an arc that was like like for good and bad reasons. I wish there was more. But there are good reasons which more because it was also there was so much interesting content in there that especially the inner politics of Atlantis is something that I think was great. And I hope we get to see King Nananu one more time and see King Shark and see what his deal is and how he's ruling his land, because King Shark running a kingdom is just like a crazy concept to me.
Yeah, it reminds me of M'Baku.
yeah, it's for sure. So I would like to see that play out. But we got a new arc coming up. We got Rocket is a New Gods arc. Orion is in there. We have a Green Lantern in there. We got a couple of interesting figures in there. Some of those aliens, some of Forager's old buddies.
Yes.
Are on that poster. So did not expect the Rocket story to go there. I thought we might get more Milestone Comics stuff. Maybe some Static in there, but it seems like they're going in a completely different direction.
Icon.
Yeah, Icon for sure. Different direction with this, but still should be fun nonetheless.
Yep.
Of course, we're with you guys every week. This episode's coming out on Thursday. We recorded this. We're streaming live here, and we're doing this. We're doing this on Tuesday. So this episode comes out in just a couple of days. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out all of our content on YouTube here. Make sure you hit the subscribe to subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the like button on this video if you did like, and leave a comment. What did you think of this episode of Young Justice? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What did you think of the arc overall? Did they tie everything together? Give us a comment in the comment section. We're very active in there. We like to communicate and interact with you guys to get your thoughts on everything. And of course, if you like this content, make sure you hit up our podcast network as well. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. You can find us New Generation Podcast Network to find that content. But that's going to do it for now. Thank you guys for checking us out. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.